Welcome to Autism ADHD TV. It is the place to be for parents and professionals. I'm your host, Holly Blanc Moses, the mom psychologist who gets it. We dive into all kinds of important information like behavior, social skills, and learning. All right, let's get started. Hi, Teri. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Holly. I'm so excited to be with you and be able to talk to you today.
Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and our watchers?
Okay, my name is Teri Houghton, and I am a single mom of 5 kids aging from 18 to 8. 2 of my kids are biological, 3 of them are adopted, which I love them all the same. They are all my children, but that's the story of my parenting and motherhood journey.
So 5 kids, you are busy.
5 kids, yes.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today about a really sensitive topic, and that is being a parent of differently wired children, divorce, and co-parenting.
Yes, yep, it's essential. You have to figure it all out to raise these kids.
That's right. And so, there's lots of research out there and it tells us different things. But overall, what we find is divorce is actually more common in families of differently wired children.
Yeah, I believe that. The stresses, I think, are higher than people realize from the outside. And it makes it harder on a family unit with siblings, with spouses. And, sometimes it does come to a point where other choices have to be made as far as what family structure looks like.
Right. And of course, no one goes into a marriage thinking it will end in divorce. And so, divorce is already such a painful event. So I think there are special circumstances in families of differently wired children. And oftentimes when I hear from families that I support, and also in my own family, I'm going to put Sammy down for a second. For those of you who are watching, just put Sammy down. He was wiggling. So our money, right? And children who are differently wired have special needs, and that might be therapies, and that might be other, specialized babysitting or specialized tutoring or specialized schooling, and it can really add up. I mean, what do you think about, money being a part of some struggles?
I think in my own personal story, I think more than money and time tied together. So after we had so many kids, I started staying home. I still was doing some work on the side, but essentially I was a stay-at-home mom. Yes, we've had a ton of therapies, speech therapy, behavioral therapy, and that all takes time. And so I think for us, part of it was I could not and chose not to grow my career at that point because I just needed to be with kids who, in my opinion, needed more. Now, I had kids coming home very fast through those years once we started adoption, because adoption takes a long time. And so kids started coming home at a regular basis. And so there was a time when I had 4 kids under the age of 5. So I think the money part of it, for us, we could figure that part out. But I think part of what the resentment, maybe that's not the correct word, but there was tension between part of me still wanted to grow as a businesswoman and needed more support from my ex-husband with the kids, because I feel like that really fell on me, and he was growing his career at the same time. So it wasn't so much as arguing about money as it was just struggling with the pieces financially, how to keep doing it. But you also, there was so much time like traveling back and forth to hospitals for surgeries and therapies. And for me, just really keeping little kids alive in that time, that was a full-time job.
Right, definitely. And so I think it is really important when you talk about time, which isn't something that comes up often, but you're absolutely right. So when you think about the time that it takes to get back and forth and what that looks like for therapies and also what that looks like for a person's career, whether you are a mother, a father, or a partner. So, you have this idea and about the way you think you want your life to be set up, but it may look differently. It may look different when you have kids that have different needs. So, you also brought up sort of a different look into this, which was, what does it look like when you have an idea in your head about your job or your career? Because a lot of people do need to work outside the home at the same time. And some people are working inside the home, which again is a massive job in itself. So balancing all of those things and also the marriage can be really hard. And how do you support each other? And one parent, who is not always, but typically the mother, seems to take on more of the responsibilities when it comes to childcare and therapies.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I feel like we got so wrapped up in taking care of kids and surviving and getting them what they needed that the marriage, it didn't get taken care of the way it needed to. And I think it's so hard in quote unquote regular families for parents to pull back. But when you're dealing with kids who have so many needs that you don't even understand, that you're trying to figure out, and then to get help outside to go on a date, to do those things, and then to have the energy on top of it, it's a huge struggle. And I think kids who are wired differently, they take so much more emotional and physical time and energy from you that it does really play into a marriage and a relationship. And you can see families who are going through that just struggling because you only have so much time in the day and you only have so much bandwidth in the day. And at the end of the day, when you're dealing with kids who need more than sometimes even feels humanly possible, sometimes you put those things that started the whole family on the back burner because you don't know how to, there's no more energy to put into that. And so I think, everybody working outside the home, inside the home, wherever people are working, there's this huge stress on top of it. But I believe in marriage, after walking through what I've walked through, if parents can somehow figure out how to give each other a break and then figure out how to come back together as a couple, even if it's for a half an hour a week or something like that, it's better than nothing, because nothing can in the end destroy what started out as what starts a family, really.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense too. Like you said, you only have so much energy. So when you think about your gas tank, right? And it's going down. That gas is leaving the engine. The car is kind of stalling out, and then to give more after that can be so hard. And I don't know about you, but by the end of the day, I start to get more irritable. And my husband definitely does not get the best part of me, unfortunately, if we're going to keep it real. So.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. And I think that happens to lots of couples, not just, couples struggling with differently wired children. But I think, like you were saying at the beginning, like divorce is not what any of us want to go through. And it's a horrible, it's just such a journey of pain and feelings of failure and so much wrapped up in that I think my hope for this is, after walking through this myself, if I could tell somebody else maybe some ideas that I think didn't go right in my marriage, to help them move forward. And I think, acceptance is also the other thing. I think when you have differently wired children, you have to learn to accept that life doesn't look like you thought it would. And I think if both partners aren't on that same path, then the tension really starts to build up. If you're like, well, life was supposed to look like this, but now it looks like this, and now we're dealing with really hard things. If you can come together as a couple and face it together, it's got to feel better than feeling like you're on an island trying to do that.
That is true. And so you brought up an important point, because parenting looks different, right? Parenting neurotypical kids is not the same as parenting differently wired children. And sometimes that will come up, I see, as a struggle in marriages, where you find that one partner thinks they shouldn't be doing that. That's not the way I was raised. That's disrespectful. And that can be understandable, given that person's experience. And then the other partner is not feeling that way. They have another way of parenting. And sometimes those parenting styles, they can crash.
Yeah, I think that that's true. And I think sometimes it happens in these partnerships. And I think if the primary caretaker, whoever that is spending time at therapies and all those things, you're seeing things differently than the partner who is not directly involved in that, because you're seeing like, oh, we need to change this, or can we work with this, or we really need to talk about this. And I don't think you always come back to the same point, because you're not seeing the experience through the same eyes. And I do think that the other part about this is, I think we all bring our own histories into this. So depending on where your partner is at in their own life and their own journey and their own reconciliations of whatever happened in their childhood, per se, or something, that you have to feel like if people aren't healed in their own past, and then they're dealing with differently wired children, there's that whole mix of emotions there that makes it hard to parent together, because sometimes as adults we're dealing with stuff from the past and we're not ready to deal with what our children are going through. And you can be on two different levels then as parents. So it makes it really hard. And I also think what you see in your eyes and your perspective of your life is different than your partner's perspective, what they're seeing. And so we definitely ran up against that, where, I was seeing one part of this, like, we need to do this, we need to do this, and my partner was seeing it different. And it was sometimes hard to reconcile, how do we do this? And I think sometimes it comes from our own hurts of the past and not dealing with that first, and then helping kids. So
Definitely. And that's a really good point, is we all have our own journeys before we become parents. And that plays a big part in our parenting and our expectations of how our children are supposed to behave, or what life is supposed to look like, because of some ideal we had before. And so you're absolutely right. I think that definitely can play a part. So when you get to the point, if you decide that this marriage it's not working, you've tried to work it out, maybe you've gone to counseling, you have done a lot of communicating or not a lot of communicating, so it can go either way, that you decide to divorce. So do you feel comfortable talking about that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like everybody's journey in life helps somebody else because there's somebody else going through it. And so I definitely thought that our marriage came to a point where my partner had decided that this marriage wasn't for him anymore. And you know, it's the hardest thing you could ever tell your children and walk through. I mean, in my mind, when you talk about how your life was going to be, we were going to be married forever. So you're going through that, and then you're telling your children, and then children who are struggling. And in my case, adoption is about rejection and loss. I mean, that's the underlying point of that. So then I felt like, oh my gosh, we're doing that again. And so it has been a journey of trying to figure out not only how to reconcile all those feelings inside me, but then how to help children, all my children, and then add another layer to children who are already struggling with so much emotionally. And so it is very hard, but I also think you can come to a point where you learn to let go of your emotional part. You have to deal with that separately. And then you have to help these kids get to a point with your ex on how the best that family life can look, and help these kids the best that you can. I mean, I almost think about this, and maybe this is wrong, but when I think about my kids and my ex-husband, these kids are our 5 assets together, and we need to run this as a business and a professional way, which means how we talk about each other in front of our kids needs to be appropriate. Our emotions need to be appropriate, because our kids, I mean, my kids that are dealing with hard stuff, their emotions are so out of control anyway that I don't want to bring more of that on. And you have to walk through that. And I've done it very imperfectly a lot of days, but you just have to keep trying and keep moving forward. And with kids that are already really, really struggling, I mean, you still do need your partner there, your ex-partner there in some way to make it work, because it's like parenting plus when you have a kid who is wired differently and has special needs. So it's like over the top, and you just can't walk through it by yourself very well. It's hard, very hard.
Right. And thank you for sharing that. And you know, I know that a lot of people that are listening or watching can identify with everything that you're saying. And what does that look like? And like you said, you're both connected by 5 children, and you will be in each other's lives forever, right? So you have these 5 babies. So something that often comes up with my patients is frustration over one parent not being able to control how the other parent does things in their home. And, you know, I don't know what this is like because we are not divorced. We've talked about it many times because of stressors that have come up in our relationship. It's definitely not been easy. But, you know, talking about what that might look like and how do you, like you said, reconcile that? How do you accept what you can and can't control?
Yeah, I mean, that is huge, and it's very hard to let go of that. You know, it is. I mean, the rules at his house are very, very different than the rules at my house, and kids know it. And I think sometimes wildly different kids, and kids in general, kids know how to manipulate between house A and house B. And I think for me, I've just had to really step back. And I've also had to have conversations with my children of like, when you're at my house, this is what I expect. You know, the screens, this is screens are a big thing, of course. So this is what you can have at my house, and I know it's different at your dad's house, but as long as you're here, this is what needs to happen. And then what happens at his house, I have had to just really take a step back and let it go. And I mean, I think one of the things that we have done that I think is positive is we said at the very beginning for all these kids, you will be on our parenting plan wherever you're going to be with all your siblings. And we've kind of been pretty forceful about being like, especially when they start driving and stuff like that, like you don't get to play the game of like this house or this house, depending, well, if I go to this house, I know I'll get my way. When your siblings are here, you guys are all together at this house, and then you go to this house on our schedule. And I think that is one of the biggest things that has helped, is that, you know, their schedule is very set, which differently wired children, I mean, that's a big thing, like, at least for mine, like they need those schedules. And, you know, there's just no playing back and forth, which I think is manipulation. And I think differently wired children, mine especially, will play that game of manipulation if given the choice. So, but some of it I just have to let go and be like, when they're there, they're there. And that's why I think it's important as adults going through this, that you have to figure out, first of all, how to have your own life, which is really hard. And you have to figure out, just get through it, and then they'll be back and you can keep going forward. But it's hard. You have to let go. You have to realize our kids have two lives. They have a life with him and they have a life with me. And that's the way it is. And it's not fair and it's not right, but it's reality. And you have to kind of step out of it, because you can't control what happens at the other person's house. It's just the way it is in divorce.
Right. What would you say has helped the most with your co-parenting?
I think for me, the most has helped is an acceptance that this is the way it is. This is the way it is. This is the way it will be the rest of the time that I'm raising children. It was very hard for me to come to that, but that is what has helped. And I think when I worked through my own stuff and when my anger started like settling down, then I was better able to accept him just as a co-parent. And when I really realized, for me, this is just my personal story, about when I looked at him one day and realized all the feelings are gone, we still created this beautiful family together, these beautiful kids, but that is no longer the man that I want, or there's too much pain, I've walked through too much, the feelings were gone. That's when I became a better co-parent, because he really is just a co-parent. I respect him for the dad he is for them, for the ways he's walked through this with me, but there's also that pain. But when you let go of that, then that's when I became a better co-parent. And I think my kids have said to me, you and dad are doing better. My oldest has said that to me. So we're not fighting. Sometimes you just have to bite your tongue, honestly, and be like, okay, just let it go. But for me, it was the anger. The anger was so hard for me, and I could see it in my kids. And when you are carrying it inside, your kids feel it. So when they feel me being like respectful of their dad, asking them questions about their dad, that's the other part about this. Like, your kids come back to your house, let them have the freedom to talk about that other parent, their life over there, whatever they say. And there's things in your mind that'll run through being like, oh, you know, you don't want to hear it, but let them talk, because that is their life. They have both of those lives, and you have to acknowledge it and accept it. And, you know, hopefully one day your own life moves on. But, you know, differently wired children, that like, I need him to help me sometimes with that. And it's just so hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever gone through and walked through. So,
Right.
You know, and sometimes I have to ask for help from him.
And, you know, again, I know this has been such a painful journey. And I really appreciate you sharing this with us. What would you say to those who are either going through the divorce process or on the other side of being apart?
For people who are going through it, I think you have to just take it a day at a time. You have to realize your life is totally changing, and that can mean changing, like, friends change sometimes, and if you're couple friends and then you're divorced, those things change. For me, it was just a day at a time and trying to work out the details of us. I mean, I can't remember the first year of divorce that well, all the details. I knew the biggest thing was for me to take care of my kids the best I could. They were falling apart, just to support them. And then for me, it was moving on with a career and figuring that out. But I mean, many days, and there's trigger points, like the holidays are horrible. They're still horrible trigger points. To give yourself grace. And for me, this is what I've always thought, like, I want to walk through all the emotions. So if I am fortunate enough to be in another relationship, that I have already walked through that, I'm not going to bring all of that to the table for the next one. And then for people who are on the other side, like I am, to embrace what you had, try to remember the good parts of all of it, because there is good parts in different, I mean, there were good parts. And to remember that, and just remember your kids just need you. They really need you to get along the best you can. And some days you will fail. I fail. And I know I fail on those days. And then when you fail, to turn around to your kids and say, I'm sorry, I messed up. I shouldn't have said that. I was upset because this happening with your dad, but he'll always be your dad. And always let them know that, like, he's always going to be your dad. No matter what happens in my life, he's going to be your dad. And with differently wired children, I mean, it's just so hard some days. It's taught me the greatest lessons of my life, and it's taught me patience and kindness and acceptance. And so use those skills that you've used with your differently wired children in your divorce, because that's what everybody needs. Kids need that to feel secure. And differently wired children, that's why they're acting out like that. The fear is so great, and you just have to be the best you can be. And know that you're going to mess up, and find a good friend or somebody that can be like, this is what happened today, and this is how bad I was, or this is what my ex did, and I don't know why he's doing this, instead of telling your kids that, And so that would be my advice. Just be kind to yourself, let you feel the emotions you need to feel, and be there for your kids, and just love on them. And, work with your ex the best you can, because it just is so much easier than all the tension. Kids feel tension, and then they act out on that. And, do the best you can. And some days you do good and some days you don't. But in the end, remember how much you love them and how much you want them to be secure, and, walk through it together. And know you're going to have disagreements. You had disagreements when you were married. It's no different. You're still two different people.
Teri, thank you so much for sharing this with us. And you bring up such great points as giving yourself grace, getting through that moment, even if it's not the day, if it's a moment, and having, some kind of support in place, someone you can talk to, maybe that's a friend, maybe a family member, maybe it's a therapist, and keeping your kids at the forefront and working through their experience too, and what you can do to better support them through that transition, and really going between houses sometimes.
Yeah, you have to. And sometimes you have to walk through really hard places. I know for me, I hadn't ever been in my ex-husband's house, And then this year, my youngest birthday was on a day I didn't have him. And I really just wanted to see him on his birthday. I mean, he's 8. Like, it hurts so bad being by yourself on their birthday. And I asked his dad if I could come over and I was going to bring him a gift or something. And he said, yeah, sure. And, you know, you walked into that house and I mean, everything, I just kept telling myself, like, keep standing up, Teri, keep standing up. And they're like, let me show you our rooms. And I mean, I just, in my heart, I was like, oh no, I just don't know if I can do this. Like, because that's always been my thing, is like kids sleeping where I don't know, in beds, like tucking. I mean, obviously I have bigger kids, I'm not tucking them in, but just knowing they're there, whatever. And it was hard, and it was so hard, but I was so grateful, that he let me come over there and be with him a little bit on his birthday. And, you know, it just meant a lot. And it showed our kids, I think, that we are in unity over this, even if we can't be married. And if that's a failed relationship, but that we're in unity. And sometimes things like that, you just have to, and I came home and sobbed. Like, I couldn't hold it together, but I held it together for them while I was there, which sometimes you just have to do the really hard things. And you really are tied to that person, you know, for forever, because you had a family together. But I do believe there's good things on the horizons, and you just have to keep believing. You just have to keep believing. And for me, it's been a ton of tears. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's my outlet. And I saw a therapist for years, and it was good to talk to somebody who was a third party. And that was really important. And sometimes it was about my divorce, and sometimes it was about my kids who really have a hard time, and just like, not even what do I do, but just getting it out and having somebody else here. So.
Well, thank you so much for being so real and authentic with us. I know that this is touching so many people, and they are, you know, really appreciating you sharing your story with them.
Oh, thank you. Well, I believe that whatever we walk through in life is meant to help somebody else. So that's what I want to do in life, is help other people.
Thank you, Teri. Now, I know that some of our watchers and listeners are going to want to just reach out to you. So how would they do that?
So the best way to reach out to me is in my email. And my email is tbp134@gmail.com. And I'd always be willing to listen to somebody, or, you know, share a story or two.
Thank you so much. And I'll make sure that I have your email in the show notes for everyone as well.
Thank you so much, Holly. It's great to talk with you.
You too. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to click that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like this episode, please share it with someone. It may just be what they need to watch today. If you're a parent, I'd love if you came on over and joined our Facebook group, Autism ADHD Group for Parents. If you're a therapist or educator, come on over to our group, Autism ADHD Group for Therapists and Educators. You're going to find those links right down there in the notes. Thanks so much, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.
All content provided is protected under applicable copyright, patent, trademark, and other proprietary rights. All content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. No content is intended to be a substitute for professional medical or psychological diagnosis, advice, or treatment. Information provided does not create an agreement for service between Holly Blanc Moses Crossvine Clinical Group, the interviewee, Holly Blanc Moses LLC, and the recipient. Consult your physician regarding the applicability of any opinions or recommendations with respect to your symptoms or medical condition, or the symptoms or medical condition of your family member. Children or adults who show signs of dangerous behavior toward themselves and/or others should be placed immediately under the care of a qualified professional.